This is Josh White with JW Math Tutoring, and today's video is going to take a look at a PSAT exam. Specifically, this is the PSAT from October of 2021, and this video is going to go through the no calculator section, which involves 17 total problems. Just again, one thing to be aware of, during these videos, my explanations can be a lot more detailed and a little bit longer than other explanations that you might find out there, and that's because I like to show multiple methods to solve these problems wherever that is applicable. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started on the October 2021 PSAT no calculator section.
But life is a dream that calculus could never predict.
Just before I begin the no calculator section of the October 2021 PSAT, if you like this video, please of course click the thumbs up on it. Also subscribe to my channel and sign up for notifications as well. And also be aware that there will be a link to download a copy of this test in the description of the video. Alright, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. The first problem that you see here is just a basic equation, basic linear equation that it's asking you to solve. And all we have to do is just go ahead and, move some terms over to, say, the left side or the right side. So I'm going to start with the variable terms first. Subtract 6n on both sides. We get 6n plus 9 equals negative 9. And then just subtract 9 on both sides. You get 6n equals negative 18. And of course, last step, divide by 6. N is going to equal negative 3. So the correct answer for this one is letter A. Also note that you could have solved this one by back solving, meaning plugging in the answer choices. But because it's a no calculator section, and you have to do all the work or the arithmetic calculations in your head or by hand, it's probably not going to be any quicker or easier to do it that way. But it is an alternate method you could use. All right, moving on to the next problem. Problem number 2. Here you have a graph of a function, and it asks for, it asks you to find or identify the equation of it. So I'm just going to zoom in to make the graph a little bit bigger here. Okay, so here's the thing. Really for this one, you don't need to put a lot of work into determining exactly which function it is. And what I mean by that is, if there's one specific point that you can identify from the graph, and that will tell you what the answer has to be. Okay, that point is going to be the y-intercept, which is going to be right here. And so if you count it, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the y-intercept for this function, for this graph, is 0, 6. So what that means is when you plug in 0 for x into all of these answer choices, we want to get 6 as the y value, or the output. So now if we scroll down and look at the answer choices, there's only one of these which that will happen for. And also, if you know your rules of exponents, when you plug in 0 for x, say here, and here, and here, and here, anything to the 0 power, any number to the 0 power is equal to 1. Therefore, when you go to evaluate all these, it's like this first one's just going to be 2 times 1. Well, that's just 2. And the next one's going to be 6 times 1, which is 6. And C is going to be 8 times 1, which is 8. And then the last one, 12 times 1, which is 12. So which one of these is equal to 6? Well, it's obviously answer choice B. And you don't need to put any more work into it than that. All right, moving on now to the third question. Here you have a function. This is also another exponential function, and they give you some information about it here in text, and then they want to know how you would describe f of 10 equals 200. So for f of 10 equals 200, notice that 10 is basically your x value. That's your input. That's what you're plugging in. And 200 is your y value, or your output. So in the description, they tell us x is number of days, okay? F of x is number of subscribers on the xth day. So that means x equals number of days. So when you look at the answer choices, 10, which is what x is equal to in this scenario, has to be describing a number of days. So we can eliminate C right away because that talks about 200 days, and D, same thing, 200 days. So those two are out. So now we're down to A and B. And so now it's a question of which of these two is correct. And in the description, again, it says, f of x is the estimated number of subscribers. So on the 10th day, we plug in 10, whatever our output is, or whatever our y value is, that's the number of subscribers on that day. So the correct answer is going to be A. All right, because it doesn't say anything about like the number of subscribers compared to the previous day. That's what it would have to say for the answer for answer choice B to be the correct one. But it doesn't say that. It just says it's total number of subscribers on this specific day. So correct answer is letter A. Moving on now to the next problem, number 4. Here you just have basic, expression to multiply out, really distribute, and then simplify, combine like terms. So if you just use the distributive property, on the first expressions, you should get negative 15x squared minus 10x. Then you do it on the second two, you should get minus 3x squared minus 12x. A lot of negative signs here. Now we just have to combine like terms. So negative 15x squared minus 3x squared, negative 18x squared. Cross them out because they're done. Negative 10x minus 12. Oh, sorry, this should have an x on it. When I multiply negative 3x times 4, it should be negative 12x, not negative 12. So therefore, these two terms can combine, and we should get negative 22x. However, notice this is not one of the answer choices, and the reason is because technically they want you to factor this. So what can we factor out of each of these? Okay, they obviously have a common factor of 2, or specifically negative 2. They also have a common factor of x, but notice when we look at the answer choices, the only one where you take out an x is answer choice D, and that's clearly not going to be correct because notice here, just if you multiply this out, you get negative 12x squared, okay? And that's not the same as negative 18x squared, so this one's wrong, from the beginning. So I'm only going to factor out a negative 2, and that's going to leave me with 9x squared. And then it should also leave me with plus 11x. So for this one, it looks like the correct answer choice is letter B. And again, all we did on this problem was first step, distributive property. Second step, combining like terms or simplifying. And then third step, we factored out a common factor of just the number, negative 2. Next problem, problem number 5, you're given a graph of a line and you're told about another line which is perpendicular to it, and they want to know what's the slope of the perpendicular line. So this problem is not that difficult, basically involves 2 steps. So step 1, what is the slope of line N? So I'm going to find, and maybe I'll zoom in here again just to make it a little easier to read. I'm going to find 2 points where it crosses right on the number lines on this graph. One of them looks to be right here at negative 1, negative 3. Another one looks to be up here at 0, 2. And now when I move between these, okay, if I'm starting here, I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then technically I go over 1 unit to the right. So my slope for line N is going to be 5 over 1, rise over run, or my change in y over my change in x. That means the slope for line K is going to be the opposite reciprocal of this, because perpendicular lines have slopes which are opposite reciprocals. So I'm going to take this positive slope and make it negative, and I'm also going to take its reciprocal, i.e. flip it. So the slope of line K is going to be negative 1/5. Therefore, the correct answer to this problem is just going to be letter B. Moving on now to the next question, number 6. Here you're given a graph of a function, and you're asked to find the number of solutions to setting this function equal to 0. So if you take any function, you set it equal to 0, and then you go ahead and solve it, basically the solutions, or what you're solving for, the roots as they're also known, are just equal to the x-intercepts. It's basically the points where it crosses the x-axis. So there are going to be 3 of these. So the correct answer for this problem is just letter C, 3, and that's it. There's no more work. Again, these x-intercepts here, those are solutions to the equation f of x equals 0. They're also called roots, or they are also called zeros. Up next, question 7. In this picture here, this word problem, you have a beacon and a receiver, and they're initially separated by 200 feet. So its distance at the start is 200 feet. And then you're told that after 30 days, the beacon is now only 185 feet away from the receiver. Okay, so it started 200 feet away, it's now 185 feet away, therefore it moved 15 feet over a 30-day period. And they want to know how far the receiver will be after a total of 90 days. So for this one, we can just set up a nice little proportion. We can basically say, okay, if it moved 15 feet in 30 days, then it's going to move how many feet in 90 days? So I have feet on top on both sides of the proportion, and I have days on the bottom. Now, I mean, you could go ahead and cross multiply this and do 90 times 15 and then divide that by 30, but it's much, much easier to recognize one of two things. Either A, that like the scale factor here between the left side and the right side is just 3. In other words, 30 days to 90 days is times 3. So you just multiply 15 feet times 3, and that would give you 45 for the number of feet that it moves over 90 days. Or even if you didn't recognize that, notice that the 15 feet is equal to half of the 30 days. In other words, 15 is half of 30. So therefore, the number of feet it moves in 90 days would have to be whatever half of 90 is, or 90 divided by 2, which again is 45. So after 90 days, it will have moved 45 feet. Careful, that's not the answer, because the answer wants to know how far apart are they. So you technically have to do 200 minus 45, and that's going to be 155 feet. Correct answer for this one is going to be letter C. All right, next up, question 8, we have a system of linear inequalities in this problem. So there are many different ways that you could attack this one. Also going to zoom in on this one just to make sure the graph is large enough to be seen. So the first thing I would do is I'm going to take this top line here, and I'm going to come up with the equation for it. And then once I have that, that'll eliminate some of the answer choices right away. So notice that this line, let me just delete that. Okay, first of all, it has a y-intercept of 2 right here. So its b value is 2, and its slope is basically up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. So its slope is just positive 1 over positive 1, or we could just say 1. So this line is just going to be y equals mx plus b, or y equals 1x plus 2. Or most likely it's just going to be x plus 2. So now we look at the answer choices. Okay, we need to see y, and I mean these are going to be inequalities. You won't see an equal sign, but it needs to have something with x plus 2 in it. So a is eliminated, b is eliminated. We're down to just c and d so far, because those both have an x plus 2. Notice, though, they have opposite inequality signs. So if we just look at the shading for one of the for this line, that'll help then determine which answer is correct. So I'm going to pick a test point of 0, 0, okay, right here at the origin. Now 0, 0 is not in the shading. That means that technically 0, 0 will not work in the inequality or the answer to this problem. So notice if I go to C and I plug it in, I get 0 is less than or equal to 2. That does work, which would indicate that in this for this answer choice, 0, 0 would be shaded. However, if I look at answer choice D, I get 0 is greater than or equal to 2. That is false. That is not correct. That indicates that 0, 0 is not in the shading or not in the solution set. So therefore, the correct answer to this one is going to be letter D. Notice that I only had to identify the line and the shading for one of the lines in the problem. I did not have to spend time or waste time doing both of them. However, I will just show you and confirm for the second one as well in case you wanted to do that one. So if you look at the other line here, in the graph, it has a y-intercept of -2. So its b-value is -2, and its slope, say, it looks like right here it goes through a point, so it looks like its slope is up 1, 2, 3, right 1. So up 3, right 1. So its slope would be 3 over 1, or just 3. So it would be like y equals 3x minus 2. Now, if you look at the answer choices, again, those are the same for both for C and D. So now you would have to look at the shading again to see which one is correct. So here's the thing. Technically, like, it is this side of the line that's shaded, but it's not the but like 0, 0, I mean 0, 0 is shaded and is in the solution set for this line, even though on the overall graph it isn't. So I'm going to pick a point that is in the overall shading of the solution just to double check and be sure. So I'm going to pick 0, 4 now as my point, and 0, 4 is shaded for this one. So what that means is if I go down here and check it, okay, 4 is less than or equal to, now 3 times 0 is just 0, and then minus 2. 4 is less than -2. That is incorrect. That is false. If you look at answer choice D, basically we get the opposite thing. 4 is greater than or equal to 0 minus 2. 4 is greater than or equal to -2. That is true. That is correct. And since 0, 4 is in the shaded portion, like, that's what we want. So that's just further confirmation that the correct answer for this one is going to be letter D. All right, next up, problem number 9. You just have a linear equation, and it wants to know which one of these has no solution. So hopefully you remember that for a linear equation that have no solution, all the variables will cancel out, and you will be left with two numbers that are not equal. So then really what we're looking for is, we're looking for the same number of x's on both the left and the right. So in A, we have 6x equals 3x. That is going to have a solution. It's just going to be 0. In B, we have 6x on the left, and we have 4x on the right. That's going to have a solution, so these are not the answer. In C, we have 6x and 5x. Again, that is going to have a solution, and then it's going to be D as the correct answer, because we have 6x plus 3 equals 6x, and now if you subtract 6x on both sides, you get 3 equals 0. That statement is false. It is never true, regardless of what value of x you plug in, so therefore it does not have a solution. So correct answer is letter D. Next question, problem number 10. This one deals with basically the quadratic function, specifically the discriminant part of it. So when you have a quadratic function like we do here, ax squared plus bx plus c, for it to have exactly one solution, the discriminant, which in the quadratic formula is the part underneath the radical, okay, which is b squared minus 4ac. This part right here has to equal 0. When that equals 0, then there is only one real solution. It's a double root or a repeated root. So b squared minus 4ac has to equal 0. That's what we're looking for. A is obviously wrong. It doesn't have b squared in it. B is wrong. D also doesn't have b squared, so by process of elimination, it looks like C. The only thing that's different between what the equation I've written and answer choice C, which is the correct answer, is they just moved, this term over to the right. So b squared equals 4ac, and that's it. Correct answer for this one on quadratic equations. All right, next up, problem number 11. Here they give you a situation with a linear equation. It's written in standard form, and they want to know which graph represents it. So there are multiple ways you could do this one. I think that the easiest way is to go ahead and first find the y-intercept. So that means you just basically you plug in 0 for x, and that causes the first term to drop out, and so the y-intercept is going to be equal to 360 divided by 20. We can cancel out the zeros. 36 over 2, which is just 18. So which of these graphs have a y-intercept of 18? Okay, A does, so we keep it for now. B does not. C does not have a y-intercept of 18, doesn't even have a y-intercept, and D does not. So we don't have to bother, looking at the rest of the problem or anything else. We can just basically eliminate all the wrong answer choices by just looking at one thing, which is confirming the y-intercept. Note, you could have also done this using the x-intercept. If you plugged in 0 for y, the x-intercept turns out to be 12, and then you could have gone through the graphs and seen which ones have an x-intercept of 12. The only problem is, if you do that, C does have an x-intercept of 12, so then you would have only been able to eliminate B and D, and then you would have had to do more work to compare A to C. Also, one last thing, notice you could have also eliminated answers by looking at the slope of the line. The slope, just to review, it's negative a over b when it's in standard form. So this one would be negative 30 over 20. The actual value itself is not what's important. What's important is the fact that it's a negative number. So you can eliminate some of the ones that have positive slopes by knowing that the slope of this line has to be negative. Okay, moving on to the next question. Problem number 12. Here we have a quadratic function, and notice it is in vertex form. So, that is just a times x minus h squared plus k. All right, so when it's in vertex form, let me start over. The vertex for any quadratic function will represent the maximum or minimum value of the function. Maximum value if it opens down, minimum value if it opens up. So that vertex point, which for this problem is negative 100 because h is negative 100, and then comma negative 50. So this is the vertex. This is the point where the maximum value occurs. And you also have to know that the maximum value will always be your output or your y value, or in this case, your k. Same thing if it was the minimum as well. So the answer to this is just going to be b negative 50. The maximum value is just the y coordinate of the vertex, or the minimum value is the y coordinate of your vertex for a quadratic function. Next question, problem number 13. Here you have a system of equations, and it looks complicated, but there's one little trick to this one that actually makes it very easy to solve. And that trick is taking the top equation and factoring the left side as a difference of squares into x plus y, x minus y. The reason you want to do that is because since the bottom equation is equal to x equal to 5, now you can use substitution and you can replace x minus y in the top with 5. So now you get 5 times x minus y, replace x plus y with 5. Now you get 5 times x minus y equals 100, and then you just divide by 5, and therefore x minus y is just equal to 20. And that's it. The correct answer is letter C. Note that you could also technically do this problem by taking the bottom equation, solving it for x or y, plugging that in, that what you get into the top equation, then multiplying that out using FOIL, and then going through and like basically get a quadratic function you have to solve, and you can factor it or you could use a quadratic formula, but that is so much longer and so much more work than, just basically doing what I did here. But it is an alternate way to solve the problem. All right, question 14, you have a system of linear equations here, and they basically want to ask, and they ask you what is the value of x for the solution where these two lines will intersect. So I'm just going to use elimination to solve this. But since we want to know the value of x, I'm going to eliminate y. That way I can just, if I eliminate y, then what I'm left with will be in terms of x, and then I can just get x, and that's it. I don't have to do any more work. So I'm going to multiply the top equation by 2 on both sides. That'll give me 2x plus 2y equals 24. The bottom equation is x minus 2y equals 9. That doesn't need to be multiplied by anything. Now I add down the columns. I get 3x equals 33. I divide by 3. And I get x equals 11. So the correct answer to this problem, what you would grid in for this problem, is just the number 11. All right, for the next problem, number 15, excuse me. Here you have a function which gives the perimeter of a rectangle and gives you some expressions for its length and its width, and it wants to know for each inch that the width increases, how many inches will the perimeter increase. Okay, so just to get a visual, here's our rectangle, here's our width and our lengths, whatever, if I kind of drew them out, and then here's the formula they have up here. I mean, this formula is not particularly complicated, it's just what you get when you add up all four sides. Okay. So there's two different ways you could do this. I mean, one way, the theoretical way is, well, when you look at this equation, this is just a linear equation. It's like of the form y equals mx plus b. And so for each inch that the width increases, how many inches will the perimeter increase? It's just asking for the slope. So in other words, the answer is going to be 8. Now, if you don't see that, if you don't recognize that, that's fine. Then I would use this method or this strategy. Basically the idea of picking numbers. So let's let the width be equal to 1. What's the perimeter equal to? Or in other words, what's p of 1? Well, 8 times 1 plus 4. That's just going to be 8 plus 4, which is 12. Now, let's say I increase the width by 1. So now it's going to be equal to 2. So now we just plug in 2. 8 times 2, 16. 16 plus 4. The new perimeter is going to be 20. So for each inch that the width increased, how much did the perimeter increase by? Well, 20 minus 12 is just 8. So that's an alternate way to get the answer if you don't recognize, the kind of the theoretical approach that I went through first. Again, this is using picking numbers. I just picked a value for the width. I calculated it. I increased that value by 1 unit and then, or 1 inch, and then I calculated the new perimeter and then just found the difference between them. All right, question number 16. Here you have a quadratic equation, and they're basically asking for the value of t, and in these expressions they give you in the problem, t is basically just the number underneath the radical. So all you're doing in this problem is you're taking this quadratic equation, you're going to solve it either using completing the square or quadratic function, and then you're just going to simplify your answer, and whatever number under the radical is, that's what they want. So a is 1 here, b is negative 4, c is positive 2. So I'm going to use quadratic formula. So it's negative b plus or minus square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2. And then that's all over 2 times 1. So now to do some simplifying, out front it's going to be 4, in the bottom it's going to be 2, and then underneath here, negative 4 squared is 16, and then 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 4 is 8, so it's 16 minus 8, so it's going to be 8 underneath the radical. And notice, so this could technically be simplified further, but we don't want to do that because the format that they give you in the answer has it over a 2 on the bottom. So since our answer currently has a 2 on the bottom, we don't want to simplify the 8. We don't want to turn it into 2 root 2 and then keep going from there. We want to keep it exactly how it is. So in this problem, like r is basically 4 and t is equal to 8. So therefore the correct answer for this one, just like the previous problem, is going to be 8, and that's what you would grid in. All right, the last question on this is problem number 17. And this one you just have to basically use a surface area equation. So here's a box, a gift box. They give you its dimensions. It's 1 foot tall, 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep. And okay, they charge 30 foot per square foot of area or surface area. What will they charge to wrap this gift box? So all we have to do is first find the surface area, and then we're going to multiply that by 30 cents. So the formula for surface area of this is basically a rectangular prism, it's 2 times each of the, 3 different sides that you can have. Basically, you can have, a length times a width, which would be like the top and bottom. You can have a length times a height, which would be the sides, and then you can have a height times a width. That's what this last one is. And that would be the front and back. So now you just got to plug in all the numbers. So length and width are each 2. Length is 2, height is 1. Height is 1, width is 2. So now we go and multiply this all out. 2 is 8, 2 is 4, 2 is also 4. So it looks like the total square feet for surface area of this gift box is 16 square feet. So then we just have to multiply that by the 30 cents per square foot. That comes out to 4.8, or in other words, $4.80. So like it says here, don't use the dollar sign when gridding your answer in. So all you would grid in is basically 4.8. Now you could also technically grid in its improper fraction, so you could do 24 divided by 5 as well. But I think most people would probably just put in as 4.8 as the the decimal form of it. So those are all 17 questions on the No Calculator section of the October 2021 PSAT. If you have any questions about any of these problems, feel free to leave a comment below, or reach out to me via other methods as well. Find me on Reddit or other places. Otherwise, if you like this video, again, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. Sign up for notifications as well. And look for the solutions to the calculator section coming up within the next couple of days.